Hello, everyone. It is Wednesday. I'm coming on Wednesday because tomorrow I am headed off. So I am Tenille Hoogland, the administrator, the host, the coach of Athletes Thriving in Perimenopause and Beyond. Thank you for joining me and taking a listen into this week's topic that I've created, and that is called metrics. And I love this because I'm working with Zane Castro, who was my old coach and is continuing to be one of the lead thinker in exercise physiology and coaching and how to put it together. And we have been really diving deep into the metrics of the athletes at Team Element. And I thought I wanted just to give you a little bit of just an idea of how potentially you can think about metrics. And so it adds to your life and your goals and to your longevity and your health and all those things. So I should also say this has come out of a lot of discussion with Beth Claxton and Tanya Spagnuolo, and totally just butchered her last name. But in thinking about how do we integrate health markers and biomarkers, specifically looking at blood work, and thinking about the various ways that this also impacts our training. So I am a whole lot deep into metrics and wanting to really get tangible with what can we learn and how do we know. So that's what I'm talking about today. So let me get into it a little bit. So the very first thing that I wanted to share with you is when we think about metrics, what I'm talking about is I'm talking about data, really. I'm talking about things that we can measure. And those things can be qualitative or they can be quantitative. And we typically, when we're thinking about sport or we're thinking about strength, we're headed toward the quantitative. So looking at heart rate variability, the numbers, just strict numbers. But we don't want to, and I'm not going to talk so much about the qualitative measures and metrics today, but they can be and are as equally important for us to measure and that we can really hone in on. So, but today I'm going to focus on the quantitative metrics. So the very first question I want you to just consider when you think about all the things, like you can even pop into the chat, like what are all the things that you measure, right? Like we can measure heart rate variability. We look at deep sleep, REM sleep. We can look at pace, power. We can look at efficiency scores, intensity factors, the training stress scores if you are on Training Peaks. We can look at, my goodness, like what else can we look at? There's so many things that we might actually be able to start taking on or looking at. And where we want to come to is like, how is this metric going to support your outcome goal? So that might be your outcome goals might be things like the race that you want to do, the event that you want to get to. And so that might be like, is this actually aligned with those things that you want to do? They may not be. And so then we say, okay, well, how is it that they are supporting our process goals? So all the goals that are going to get us to that outcome goal. And that's where the metrics actually will become more valuable and alive for us. So when we think of process goals, it's like, okay, well, I am currently at this point in my strength and my speed and my skill level in my whichever, and I'm going to move toward, and I want to move toward here. Well, how do I know I'm getting there? Right? Like, how do I really know that I'm going to get there? And so these metrics can be motivating. They can be like, oh my goodness, I just got, an athlete. She's like, I just got another 4 watts. And she's like, I know it's only 4 watts. And I'm like, are you kidding me? 4 watts is amazing. So we've got to like celebrate the things that we've get, right? And they can be motivating. It's like, this is working. And, and this is really, truly where we can thrive with using these metrics. The metrics can be really helpful. Like I'm thinking in my Aura ring or the metrics of understanding heart rate variability, to understand how can I make a decision. Like you know what, I am feeling a little run down. My Aura Ring is even telling me that I'm feeling run down. Maybe it's a bit of a time to back off. Maybe I don't. I'd love to do that workout just because I'd like to be consistent, but you know what? Today's not the day for me to go out and drill it. So I believe, I'm very firmly, this is like just a little thing. It's like we look in at time as completely linear, like we're always losing time. I want us to think as athletes as a circular. I want to think like the day we're going to have another sunrise, hopefully, like inshallah, but we'll have another sunrise, and that sunrise will bring a new beginning for us, and maybe a new feeling in our body, particularly if we're going through perimenopause symptoms that are challenging. Does it add to your life and to your understanding of what's happening in the changes? If it's actually supporting you and making you feel like, I finally get it, this is what's actually moving the marker, I understand my body better because of this, then awesome. Keep doing it, keep utilizing an amazing tool, because that's really supporting you. But where are the problems with our metrics, and what is it that we might be wanting to just pay a little attention to? First of all, measurement algorithms. We know that there's not a ton of science in the with females, particularly females in perimenopause and or the beyond. So we have to just really take it for, we make some assumptions that the researchers that, for example, the Aura Ring, like, are the algorithms based on females? Like, how are they coming up with this data? Like, are we just a big aggregate? Like, how do I understand myself as N of one? Is this sort of technology applied to me? We can't make the assumptions, and yet we still want to take in the value of what they might offer us. So really, you have, like, what I want to encourage is that you're the scientist in understanding, like, does this ring true for me? Do I need to dig deeper? Is this actually enabling me to go through what we said are the top 3 things of why it can be? Is it motivating you? Is it helping you make good decisions in your life? If your Aura Ring is telling you to back off, and you actually do, and you're just like, holy smokes, that actually worked. I didn't get sick. I was able to come back the next day, and it felt good. Like, I'm going to try that again if I'm trying to track and understand. Or did I make the decision the other way and I didn't listen? And man, I just, like, for the next 3 days, I just couldn't get in a good workout. It just kind of kept on going downhill. So understand those things as how it relates to you. Data false reads. That could be a big one, and I know that for a lot of my athletes, and we sometimes struggle with the heart rate monitors, and they're getting so much better. And I do agree, like, the wrist watches, like on the Garmin's, are getting better, and they're reading more accurately, and you can trust them more. Of like, before, you only could wear the chest strap. But there are times that, something's really spiking. The Zwift just went crazy, or, you dropped out, or, like, we got to be careful, like, when we start reading on data, that the data is not always good data. And when we make decisions based on data, then make sure that the quality of the data is there. And that's a big issue right now, particularly with, like, so much AI and making these decisions. And hopefully AI is actually better at actually finding those data points that are extraneous, and not like they're just like, that doesn't quite look right. The margin of error. So I was just listening to a podcast, and I'd have to research this a bit further, but they were talking about the DEXA scan, and it's just like, what is the margin of error here? And we know, like, if you're looking at MyFitnessPal, like, what is the margin of error of, like, what you're actually taking in terms of a caloric need, and, like, what is actually what is that actual calories? And we know not all calories are equal. And so, like, what is it that we're actually measuring, and how are we using this information that actually is guiding us to have a really good decisions about, again, where we want to go? If we're using metrics that aren't adding value to our training experience and value to how we are building confidence, value in terms of our understanding, values in terms of the scientific inquiry of N=1, you how figuring yourself out. And I would argue, like, leave the metrics at home. Like, if you don't understand them or we're not able to use them, then why are we, like, what's the point? Like, what is the point? What I do wanted to say, like, what are some additional advantages of them is they keep you accountable. Like, it's like, oh, like, this is one actually thing that drives me nuts. I think, I don't know how it's working. Like, my Garmin is just like, time to move. And I'm just like, I've been running around. Like, what are you talking about? I think it's on time, or I actually haven't investigated it very much, but it's interesting. It's like keeping you accountable to getting up, to moving, to, that's just like one little thing that could be possible that it does. A positive is that it might be uncovering something that we don't want to see. And I think that there's value in that, and saying, oh, this continues to pop up, and I guess I no longer can ignore it because it seems that there's really something valuable there. That might be, for example, that when you are looking at your training plans, for, like, if you're an endurance athlete and you are continuously, yes, getting stronger, but you can't hold threshold anymore, or if you can't sustain a hard pace because everything you're doing is in a high intensity interval training methodology, totally great for health, totally great for all the things. But when it comes to a performance, if it comes to being able to sustain just hard work, and now you are just like, oh, like, people, this is a real thing that coaches are looking for. Then it's just like, okay, high intensity training, perfect, totally getting the metrics that we want in terms of health parameters. And when it comes down to, now let's see how we can do this and apply this to our race or our event performance. Let's make sure that we can. Let's make sure that that mindset is ready. It may be ready physiologically, but we need to expand out that ability on the different components of how we actually perform. And I think that also it will help us understand the stories. A story in terms of, like, just like as an example I just gave, like, what is it that we're trying to get? Are we trying to maintain? Are we trying to improve? What are we trying to really do? And what is the story that we're trying to create in terms of our health journey, in terms of our fitness journey? And I know, for one, like, where we use metrics a lot in Team Element is being like, all right, let's examine the data. You don't feel like you've improved? Let's look at it. Let's make sure that we can understand what's happening and dive into it, because that's going to, in most cases for my athletes, if they come just like, I need to just like double check in with things here, and we do that, we come together and it's like, okay, well, look at the progressions that you have made. This is, and also, you know what, it's too soon to find progressions, because quite frankly, sometimes physiology changes take time. So then we need to understand, okay, well, the story is that I wanted to have this change a lot sooner, and it's just not. Okay, well, why? Is it time? Is it the type of training we're doing? Like, all those factors come into play. The final thing that I want to say about metrics is that they're metrics. And at the end of the day, we're always wanting to figure out is, how do they help us understand our bodies better? And that's the key. That's the point, right? How do they help us understand that we are the highest technology? Because that's what I want for my athletes. I want them not to, when we're racing or we're out in an event or you're out in the bush or you're doing things, you have the confidence to know your body and, like, this is what makes me feel good. This is the nutrition I have. This is, like, all these things, because you have constantly come into your body, built awareness, created connection, and taken action so that you can be the best you can be. Hope that is super helpful for you all. And that's a wrap. This week I am actually going to be headed tomorrow to go Up north, northern Canada. Well, it's kind of like not even like midway Canada, but in any case, it's north for me. And it's definitely going to be colder, kind of. We're having a warm spell here, but I'm heading away. So I hope you all have a really fantastic couple of days. I'll be pretty quiet, and I can't wait to catch up with you guys soon. Take care.